How's everybody doing tonight? I don't know if it's been said or not, but good-looking crowd tonight.
Come on. Keep it going.
Sweet, sweet. Do work.
Great.
Do work. How many people have ever seen the show Robin Big? That's actually one of my more favorite shows, Robin Big. Anybody ever seen Robin Big? Who's never seen Robin Big? Okay, all right. So, plot is this. There's a skateboarder named Rob Dyrdek, and he's just street skateboarding, and he keeps getting kicked out of all the public locations by security and police and, you know, managers of the businesses and stuff like that. He gets so frustrated with getting kicked out, he hires a bodyguard. And this bodyguard's job was to strong-arm security guards, policemen, bosses, managers, park rangers, anybody in his way, so he could do tricks. So a security guard would come out in his security guard outfit, get out of here, this is private property, and this bodyguard would pick up the security guard and walk him out of the area so Rob could do his, I don't know, dark slide manual off the railing and destroy public property. And they would be at home and they'd be sitting on their couches doing nothing. This is essentially what the show is about. And Rob would be like, man, I gotta skate. And Big, this is his bodyguard's name, he was a huge dude. He'd stand up and he'd say, let's do work. He was hired to hang out with Rob Dyrdek and muscle around security guards, which are, you know, not real police, really. I mean, they don't have any weapons, do they? And so there's nothing these guys could do. And he would always stand up and be like, it's time to do work. Does anybody remember Big saying that? Let's do work. And so, man, I love that show. I love this title. I love everything about this. Let's do work. It's time to do work, son. I mean, when I ran the internship program, it's a lot of labor. It can be a lot of manual labor. And we'd be in the impact room sitting down, and I'd look at the interns, and I'd say, let's do work. And we just get up and we'd hammer it out and do all this work. And it was crazy fun. It was a lot of fun, but that kind of became the theme of some of my internship years, do work. And so this is cool. And I want to tell you right now that I am not ignorant of hard work. I have worked hard. How many people would say that they have put in hard labor at times in their life? Like hard work. I am accustomed to hard work. I remember my parents told me when I graduated high school, they say, you need to get a full-time job and you need to give us all the money at the end of the summer because it's going to college. I'm like, oh, man. And so what's the best paying job a young man fresh out of high school can do? It's called construction because you get paid at least a bit more than minimum wage, and it's usually cash and under the table, and you just kind of can work. You can work 40 to 60 hours a week, and you can make good money. And so what did I do? I started working construction, started framing houses, pouring basements, pouring foundations, putting hard work in, doing work. And I remember, man, it was tough at first because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to hammer a nail in. I didn't know how to lay concrete. I didn't know how to construct houses. I didn't know how things happen. And so I was given a lot of just straight up horrible jobs. And I remember one time we had poured this basement of this house and we put on the floor and we started kind of constructing the walls. We put up the trusses for the roof and we were doing all this stuff. And it was time to put P-rock on all the basement floor. This was a 3,500 square foot log ranch, actually just down Clyde Road right here. And it's this huge log ranch and log home, and we had done all this thing, and we had worked all day the day before at putting the PVC pipe and running all the drainage in the basement. Now this is a lot of work just doing that, digging ditches, laying pipe, making sure it's flowing to the sump pump, making sure everything is all ready to go. You're all day long bent over, working like this. Hard manual labor, you're dirty. It can be a lot of fun at times, it can be absolutely miserable most of the time. You know, it's only fun for like an hour of the entire day. And so you're just doing work, and then the next day, the boss said, all right, we're going to a different job, we got something else to do, but Luke, you gotta go to that log cabin, and I've already ordered, there's like 1,000 yards of P-rock dumped there was a walkout basement. He dumped all this P-rock into the front of the walkout. He's like, you're going to have to crawl over this P-rock into the basement. And he's like, and once you're in there, you just shovel all that P-rock all over the entire basement floor. And you call me when you're done. You'll be by yourself. I'm like, no way, dude. He's like, essentially, I'm dropping you in the basement. You have to shovel your way out. It's essentially what happened. So I get to the home. He drops me off. He gives me a shovel and a wheelbarrow. And him and 4 other guys left. I crawl over this mountain of P-rock. I slip through the corner of the door, and I roll down the other side. I'm in the basement. It's huge. It's huge. And now I have to shovel a mountain of P-rock from one corner of the basement to the next. And this is a big basement. Imagine filling your wheelbarrow up, going through the trenches, over the dirt, around the corner, to the corner of the basement. You look back. Oh my gosh. You know, you're like, nobody's around. There's nobody to complain to. There's nobody to talk to. Another wheelbarrow full. Take it to the, you know, and then at times they dump over on me. You know, kick everything. You're throwing the shovel against the wall. You're all by yourself. Nobody knows what's going on. You're like, why is my life? What am I doing with my life right now? And this was my day, all day long, shoveling P-rock everywhere. And it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. And that was one of the worst days of my life, honestly. And finally I finish. And it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I finally finished, called my boss. I'm done. Come get me. I'm done. I did it. He was impressed. He didn't think I was going to do it. He thought I was just going to sit outside and do nothing all day. Then another time, I remember, same thing happened. Same house, same thing. The crew goes off. My boss gives me a broom. He's like, you just need to clean up the entire premises. Because when you do construction, just garbage ends up everywhere. Pieces of wood, dust, everything. It's just garbage everywhere. You've got to clean up. And then sometimes you don't clean up for a month. You don't clean up for a month at a construction site. It's just stuff everywhere. It's just like horrible. You can barely work. There's just stuff everywhere. He's like, you just need to clean up that entire house, the entire yard, everything. He gives me this old broom. He gives me nothing. He gives, here, just sweep the house, pick up the yard, pick up everything. I'll be back at 5 o'clock. I'm all by myself. Within the first 10 minutes of sweeping the house, my broom broke in half. So what is up with this? And he gave me an old story before he dropped me off. He's like, this is my great-grandpa's broom. He just died. Don't break it. And it broke in the first 10 minutes. I was so scared. And I was mad. And anyway, long story short, I Jimmy rigged a broom with a crappy handle that gave me blisters and thorns all day in my hands, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is. I literally, what is it? Slivers, and yeah, I got slivers all day. I grabbed a piece of plywood that was like that wide, and it was like 6 feet long, and I just like nailed it to the broom head, and then, so I'm all day long sweeping with this broom handle. It's like 4 inches wide, and it's just horrible, and I was so mad. I didn't care about that broom after like the hour of that, and I had hours left to go. Do work. Do work. Sometimes you just got to do work. Sometimes you got to put a hard day's work in. You know, oh man, I just think I've been a product of being a young person who's trying to find the easy way out, not wanting to do the hard work, but wanting all of the reward and all the results, right? How many people have never studied for a test, but you want an A, right? And then you're like, what? I guessed on half of these and I got all those wrong? I can't believe I didn't even guess one right. And you're like frustrated with yourself. You didn't put any work in. You know, I remember being at college and I had a friend who had a well-paying job. I had this friend, Dave. He always had money. He had bundles of money all the time. He would fall backwards into these like awesome, well-paying jobs. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? He's like Kramer on Seinfeld. He never does anything, but always has all this money. You're like, how in the world? And every weekend he wanted to go out to eat, and he wanted to go to the movies, and then he wanted to go out for dessert after the movies, and then he wanted to get Taco Bell on the way home. And I'm like, I can't afford this, man. And I remember I started just overdrafting on my debit card. It's like I had to keep up with this kid, and it was like trying to and I didn't do any work, but I wanted all the stuff he had. Man, we got to do work sometimes. I know what it's like to work. Man, I worked 5 summers of construction, and I would come home during Christmas break, and I would work for 2 weeks during Christmas break, and I'd give all the money to my parents. Do I sound bitter? I'm still holding bitterness in my heart. I made thousands of dollars. I didn't spend one penny on myself. Finally, I remember going between my junior year and senior year. I wanted to ask Jen to marry me. And I got home and I said, Mom and Dad, I want to ask Jen to marry me. And so we talked it all out, and they agreed, this is a good idea, let's do this. And I said, but I need money for a ring. It's like, well, how much do you need? And I'm like, well, I'd like to use, thousands of dollars to buy a ring. Shoot, I want to go all out, right? Come on, somebody. And they were hesitant to give me the money. I was like, it's my money! Like, well, I don't know about that, honey. Should we let them have it? I worked for it. I couldn't believe what was coming out of their mouth. And finally, after days of talking it out, I convinced them to let me have my own money. How is this possible? Is this child abuse? I'm talking it out right now, and I'm realizing something. I've just been abused my whole life. Finally, I was able to convince them, yes, you can have half of all the money you've made this summer for a ring for your future wife.
Did they pay for college?
They paid for college. Yes, they did. They did. Yes. Yeah, I paid for college, and they paid for college. Praise the Lord. Graduated debt-free. Praise the Lord. But listen. We all worked hard to do that. We all worked hard to get that accomplished. 2 Corinthians 12:9. I'm going to read this verse, and then it'll all make sense. But listen what Paul says. It says, but he said to me, and he is God, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Do work. This is like a leadership lesson tonight. Come on, this is gonna save your life. 3 questions to ask yourself. If you're taking notes, 3 questions to ask yourself. Number 1, first question. This is all just has to do with the series, Do Work. Do I know what I'm doing? I think that's the first question you must ask yourself. Do I know what I'm doing? And I believe many of us, we decide the first thing that we need to do is just work hard. And that's a problem. And that's a mistake. Working hard is not the first goal. But getting the work done correctly and efficiently is the first goal. It's like the idea of working smarter, not harder. When I first started working construction, my first day on the job, I know nothing. We're framing this house. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm hitting my thumb and my finger with the hammer, and I'm fumbling all around. I kept trying to grab nails out of my nail bag, and they're just going all over the ground like chicken feed, and I don't know what's going on here, and blah, blah, blah. And we cut this board too short. Cut it too short. So the boss looks at me. He's like, Luke, go to the truck, get the board stretcher. I'm like, yes, sir. Run to the truck. He tells me what it looks like. Man, I am that stuff all in the truck, just the back of the truck. I'm just digging through everything. I'm all up in this thing, man. I'm looking for this board stretcher, and I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. I'm getting like frustrated. I'm like, oh my gosh, first day on the job, they're gonna think I'm an idiot. I can't find a simple board stretcher. He told me exactly what it looks like. Man, this is horrible. I'm getting embarrassed because I'm out there for like a half an hour digging through this truck, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is difficult, man. I don't want to like show my face back at the crew, and finally I come back, and like, you've been gone forever. I'm like, I can't find it. And he tells me again what it looks like. He sends me back to the truck. I'm digging through the truck. I'm just working so hard. I'm putting everything I have into finding a board stretcher. I come back. I can't find it. They all start laughing at me. I'm like, what are you laughing at? They're like, yeah, you're an idiot. I'm like, why? Construction is like, you're a bleeping idiot, I'm like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, there's no such thing as a board stretcher. You're so stupid. And you know what? I was stupid. There's no such thing as a board stretcher. I'm sorry, folks. There's no such thing as a board stretcher. And you know what? I found out that day, I need to know what I'm doing. And so I must ask myself, do I know what I'm doing? As a guy, are you willing, and girls even too, are you willing to stop and ask for directions? And I'm not just talking about driving a car. I'm talking about life. Are you willing to admit that there might be somebody else out there who knows more than you? Are you willing to humble yourself? It can be tough for any gender, but it can be really tough for a guy. Are we willing to humble ourselves and to make a phone call or send an email or to set up a meeting with somebody and say, I am not doing well at this. I know you are very good at this. Can you teach me something? Man, why can't I get an A in this class? What am I missing? I mean, come on, are we too good for a little tutoring? I hope not. You know, I had tutoring in college. I admitted, I can't figure this out. I need to get this figured out. And I remember I went to tutoring in college. I had to get this thing figured out. I wasn't too proud to admit I needed a little help to get an A so that eventually it would get easier for me, right? Come on, are we willing to stop and ask for directions? You know, it took me all summer long to learn construction. It took me all summer long to be able to slam that nail into that wood, to realize how to frame a house 16 and away with the boards, how to put up trusses, how to shingle and roof the house, how to do things. It took me all summer to learn, but I finally learned. And when I finally learned, I actually ended up waking up in the morning and looking forward to work. I wasn't given the grunt labor anymore. You know what? When you know what you're doing, you get confidence. You become more valuable. You are trusted. Now, listen, I want to just step back. You become more valuable. You know, if you really want to become valuable, don't just be the person who generally knows how to do everything. Become an expert at something. Don't just become, I can generally do just about everything well enough. That type of thinking will only get you so far in life. But to say, hey, no, I'm going to become an expert at something here. I'm going to make myself valuable. Doing the work to become an expert at something. You're trusted when you get to know what you're doing. You're blessed. You have more fun. You see success. 2 Corinthians 12:9, I read that first verse, but we're going to stay in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 tonight because Paul, he does a great thing here. He's writing to the Corinthian church. And he begins to talk about how he knows what he's doing because the Corinthian church had an issue with him. Rumors were spreading about him. They didn't trust him. All the work he had done to plant a church in this city of Corinth, it was falling apart after he left. Everything he taught them, they began to second guess. And he begins to reassure them that he knew what he was doing. In 2 Corinthians 12:11 through 13, it says this. It's going to go up on the screen. It says, I have made a fool of myself, but you drove me to it. I ought to have been commended by you, for I am not in the least inferior to the super apostles, even though I am nothing. I persevered in demonstrating among you the marks of a true apostle, including signs, wonders, and miracles. How were you inferior to the other churches, except that I was never a burden to you? Forgive me this wrong. He's telling them, listen, Corinthian church, you had the best of the best at your disposal, and you pushed it away. I knew what I was doing, and I came with signs and wonders, and I am better than these so-called super apostles. He's saying, I know what I'm doing. And he's able to begin to speak to them. Don't forget and don't neglect what I've taught you about what it is to be a church, what it is to be a Christian, how to live this life. Because I am the best at it. And he's telling them I'm good at what I do. So he's instilling into them confidence. He's instilling into them confidence. That's the first question you need to know. You need to ask yourself before you do work. Do I know what I'm doing? Do I know what I'm doing? Second question, after you know what you're doing, second question, am I working hard? Am I working hard? Now that you know what you're doing, it's time to work hard. Now listen, he continues on in 2 Corinthians chapter 14 through 15. It says this. Listen to what he talks about working hard. He says, now I am ready to visit you for the third time. And I'm telling you, it's not easy to get to places 2,000 years ago, right? You don't just hop in the car, hop in the airplane, and go. It's like, think about it. You literally have to say, I'm going to just give a year of my life to this. It's like I'm ready to spend 3 seasons in a location. And now we're just like, in 6 hours I'll be in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that's with a layover. Now, I'm ready to visit you for the 3rd time. He's working hard. And I will not be a burden to you, because what I want is not your possessions, but you. After all, children should not have to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. So I will very gladly spend for you everything I have and expend myself as well. He's like, I'm ready to work hard. I'm ready to do work for you. You've neglected me. You fired me. You poked at me. You called me names. But I'm coming back a 3rd time, and I'm ready to work even harder because I love you. And a child doesn't have to pay for their parents. So I'm like your father. I'm going to give everything to you, and I'm going to ask nothing from you. He's about to do work, son. Listen to what Proverbs 10 verse 4 says. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And I love it. Right from the beginning of time in the Garden of Eden, God gave Adam a job. Before the curse, his blessing was to work. What was his first job he had to do? He named all the animals. And that would be a lot of fun. I'm just saying, that'd be pretty cool. They didn't have as many animals back then as we have now. We've got species beyond species beyond species now. All he had to do was just name dog. Now we've got like 100 different versions of a dog, All he had to do was just, but he had to name all the animals, and it was considered not a cursing, a blessing. There is something great about working hard, accomplishing something, stepping back and saying, yeah, I did it. That felt good. I put a good day's labor in. I worked hard today. I just think about just the other day, I went outside and I raked the yard. I raked the backyard. I raked the side yards. I raked the front yard. I swept it in the piles. I put the leaves into the bags. I tied the bags. I put the bags in the garage. And I looked back at my work and I went, yeah, okay, yard looks good. I'm happy with what I've done. It feels good to put a good, hard work in. It felt good. Listen to Proverbs 20:29. It says, the glory of young men is their strength. Gray hair, the splendor of the old. It's the glory of young men is their strength. That's cool. How many men love it that they're strong? Okay, you know what I'm saying? Just love that they're strong. Every guy, just raise your hand. Even if you're not very strong, you want to be strong. You know what I'm saying? I remember when I was working out, lifting weights. Man, I love to be able to put 250 pounds in the bench press and just max out and scream like a maniac. Just go, yeah, and just get that thing up. Man, I love putting 600 pounds on the leg press and just blasting that thing up. I loved it. I loved that I was strong. And I loved that I could do really strong, hard work, and I could just be, boom, I felt good afterwards. And as you get older, it's like you're raking the yard. You're like, oh, man, my shoulder hurts. I'm like holding like a 3-pound rake, and I'm like, raking leaves, which weigh like 2 ounces each, You're like, oh, this is heavy. Man, when I was like 18 years old, I was just blasting weights. It didn't matter. I would just do it all, and I felt good afterwards. No back pain, no neck pain, no shoulder pain. Man, I would work so hard in the weight room. I remember I would go to drive home if I worked my arms really hard that day. How many people have ever done this? You worked out so hard, you had a difficult time reaching your arms up to grab the steering wheel. You're like, oh no, I think I'm gonna crash. You work out your legs so hard, you can barely hit the brake. Oh, man, that felt good. Felt good, man. I love looking back at my yard, and I love seeing what I did. All summer long I work in my yard. I fertilize it, I cut it, I rake it, I blah, 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 blah. I try to kill the moles. I just work all day long. I make sure my dog doesn't dig. I pick up all the dog doo-doo. At the end of the summer, I'm like, yeah, my yard looks good. But I want to tell you something. Comparing yourself to others and outside critics will destroy your confidence. And I believe the Bible warns against both these things. My yard looks good for me. But if I go to the millionaire's home and I compare my yard to the millionaire's yard, my yard does not look good. And the Bible says, don't compare yourself to somebody else. Now listen to what it says in Galatians 6, verse 4. It says, but let each one of you test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor. Don't look to somebody else and compare yourself to them. Like, oh man, you know, the 40K challenge. Oh, I just heard so-and-so invited 10 people yesterday. I didn't invite anybody. Oh no, I'm a bad person. I didn't put anything, I didn't do anything, I didn't do all the work. You know, don't compare yourself to them. You know, they had a free day. You probably worked all day, came home, took care of the kids, you know, took care of the house, cleaned all day long. You don't compare yourself to them. They're just a college kid running around like a little rug rat doing nothing all day, running around the mall. Ah, come to church, running around the mall. Ah, come to church. And you're just out digging a hole all day long. You know, you don't compare yourself to them. You know, because what happens, you get discouraged when you do that. You know, I looked at my yard and I'm happy with what I did. I had limited money, limited time, limited resources, but it turned out pretty good. And don't compare yourself to others, because comparing and critics will destroy your confidence. It'll destroy you. So I'm telling you, the question number 1, do I know what I'm doing? Question number 2, am I working hard? If you're doing the hard work that the Lord has asked you to do, you can be confident in what you've done. You can be confident in what you've done. And you're comparing, and critics from the outside will destroy your confidence. You know, shoot, I raked my yard all day long, took care of my yard all summer long, and if somebody was just walking down the sidewalk and they looked at my yard and they looked at me and they went, that looks like crap, man. I'd be like, well, your face is about to look like crap, because I'm going to punch you. You know what I'm saying? Because they just come on criticize you. Don't listen to them. Just say, I forget you. Yeah, don't forget that. I don't need to listen to that. Come on. I'm putting in my work. I'm putting in my work. So question number 3. Most important question of all. Am I letting God have room to work? Am I letting God have room to work? The most important part of your work is the art of letting God work. And it's an art form. The power we have is not in ourselves, but it's in God. The more we let God have room, the more power we have. You getting this? When you allow God to have room, this is what's showing. You're showing that you can relax, which is a biblical thing. To take a Sabbath, to relax. I'm going to relax on this now. I'm going to let it breathe. I'm going to take up time off. I'm going to let God do his thing now. You're showing that you can relax. You're showing you don't have all the answers, which is a good thing. And you aren't trying too hard. But there is an art to letting God work. And it's developed over time. And it's this. The art is this. This is the home run right here. This is the art. You are confident in the part you played, and now you confidently let go and let God. You're confident in the part you've played, and now you confidently let go and let God. You can't do it all. You can't even know it all. And that's where you step back and you say, God, this is where I give you this thing. And I remember we were working so hard for MotoFest, for our youth ministry here. And man, we were working so hard. And it was just like every moment of the day, it consumed my mind. Even at night, I would wake up at 3 in the morning, and the first thing on my mind was MotoFest. Oh no, I got to email that person. Oh, I got to check the status of this Facebook ad. Oh, I gotta call, Scott Murray, the motorcycle rider. Oh, I got to remind Rachel Kelly of these 10 things. And it was like consume me. And it was like it's like you just put everything you have into it. And I remember God said, let go. Let me do my thing. And it's like an art form to be able to relax. And it can be very difficult to relax. Man, maybe some of you are raising kids. Listen, you're going to make plenty of mistakes, and your kids are going to do crazy things, and crazy things are going to happen. And there's so many moments where you just have to go, whoa, God, just take over. Just take over. And it's the third question. Am I letting God have room to work? And this is the secret to success. This is the secret to success. Do you know what you're doing? Are you working hard? Letting God have room to work. You know, I love it. I love it. You know, when we passing out flyers for the 40K, you don't put too much pressure on yourself to have the perfect the perfect sales pitch. You know, come to Momentum's third annual Ugly Christmas party. This person's going to be there, and that thing's going to be there, and there's going to be this, and there's going to be that, and it's going to be awesome. Hey, you're a guy, there's single girls. You know, you're a girl, there's single guys. And you're just trying to do the perfect sales pitch. And then you're going to just beat yourself up over something if you just messed up a little bit. And that's not allowing God to have any room. But to pray over the card and just to gently and confidently, like a normal human being in a normal conversation. Hey, I want to invite you to something pretty cool. Right? Like a stud. You know what I'm saying? Girls, like a babe. Like a princess warrior.
Yeah. Woo!
Like a princess warrior. You just, boom. You know? And there's just an art form of just letting God have room to work. And he'll have the band come on out. You know, in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9, it's the verse I opened up with, and I'm going to read it again. I think it's going to make more sense now. But this is what Paul says in the beginning. He says, but God said to me, he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Do work. Doesn't that make more sense now? Isn't it just this is like a thesis? It can be the thesis for your life. You just have weak areas. You know, Paul boasted in his weakness. He was the best of the best when it came to his what he did. But yet he boasted in his weaknesses and not his strengths. He so made room for God to work. He so allowed room for God in his life. You know, do you know what you're doing? Are you working hard? But then, stepping back and letting God do his thing. Letting God do his thing. It could be a word for many of you tonight. Just that word alone could just release stress, relieve the pressure. You know, think people could be pressuring you just to know what you're going to do with your life, to know every step, to know everything. Or you could just say, you know what? I don't have it all figured out right now. God's got to do his thing in me. God's doing something. Let's stand to our feet tonight. Do work. Do work. The glory of a young man is his strength. Maybe tonight you just feel like as a man you need to step it up. You need to step it up. You need to find a job. Maybe you're in here, you're a young man, you need to work harder at school. Could be somebody in here, young girl. You just need to step it up. You need to work harder. You need to put the effort in. Let's just worship God. Let's just be thankful tonight. And just as we worship God, let's just get into this zone of relaxing and resting and letting God have room in your life. Letting God have room. Does that sound good? Let's worship. Let's worship a little bit.